In towns like this and along streets like these, a political earthquake took place in 2019. And places like Stoke-on-Trent North, Labour for years turned Tory. Since then, Channel 4 News and pollsters JL Partners have been tracking how voters feel. Now, the earth is tremoring once again. The red wall became a sea of blue in 2019, but our polling has shown support sliding over the years. Now, even seats like Dudley North, Tory majority of 11,500, would turn red. Bassetlaw, majority of 14,000, would turn red. In fact, our exclusive polling shows that for the first time, every single one of those 45 red wall seats would go back to Labour at a general election. So you went Tory last time?
Yeah.
And how do you feel about that now? Was it a good choice?
To me, no. Not really.
Next election, how are you thinking of voting, Tory or Labour?
Most likely Labour.
Labour, why?
Just disappointed with the current government.
A successful vaccine rollout saw a post-COVID bounce for the Conservatives. That trickled downhill before plunging off a cliff edge post-Partygate, boosting Labour. Liz Truss becoming Prime Minister and her disastrous mini-budget saw support soar steeply to Labour, but in the last month it's dipped again. Can I ask, which way did you vote last time round?
Conservative.
OK, and was that the first time?
No.
OK, but this time?
Tories out.
Conservative.
I haven't got a lot of faith in Labour at the moment. They're a bit wishy-washy. They
Why
keep
not?
telling you what they're going to do, but they don't tell you how they're going to finance it all.
Which way are you thinking of going, Tory or Labour?
Round here, probably Tory.
OK, do you always vote Tory?
No, Labour. But this area has become so run down through the Labour Party, and Jonathan Gullis has tried to do something about it.
Jonathan Gullis has achieved a name recognition many of his colleagues would envy, in part because of his direct manner.
Where we sadly see scumbags who fly tip their filth in our community. In Cobridge, where scroats deal and shoot up their drugs. And in Tunstall, where savages and their antisocial behaviour causes mayhem.
At a sports centre that reopened last year, Mr Gullis says delivering local projects like this are his best chance of re-election.
So this was an empty building. The sports centre shut in 2017.
Could you let scroats, savages and scumbags come here?
Good people of Kidsgrove, Talk and Newchapel, and of course neighbouring Stoke-on-Trent, all come and use this fantastic facility.
This is the moment we show Mr Gullis the results of our polling and the fight he's up against. It's a fight that was always ahead of him, he says. How safe are Red Wall MPs looking now, do you think?
I don't think Red Wall MP is safe. In fact, I don't think we ever were truly safe. I think that to be the first elected...
So how unsafe do you think you are at the
moment? I think it's very tricky. I think the opinion polls... Look, I lived through those last 6 months of 2022, as did the great British people, and I am dreading what they were thinking of us when we were in our internal war and we were bickering amongst ourselves. And so I suspect that we're in major danger. But any opinion poll today is not the opinion poll of 18 months' time when we go to the country and we'll face the electorate at the ballot box. And by then, I think, we'll see a very different place.
The Conservatives are still more trusted than Labour on some issues, like Brexit. Boosted by the signing of the Windsor Framework, the Tories lead Labour by 10%. On immigration, a key issue for Rishi Sunak, the Conservatives lead by 3%. But tomorrow, there is a budget. And on the economy, for the first time since this polling began in 2019, Labour lead. They also lead on taxation and on the cost of living. And then there's that key issue for any party that wants to win a general election, the NHS. 2 years ago, Labour were more trusted by 1%. Today, it's 24%. In fact, across 17 key issues, Labour is now more trusted than the Conservative on all but 4. If the Prime Minister doesn't deliver on those 5 pledges?
Well, then I think the reality is that the Conservatives will lose the next election. I've never been shy in saying that. If we don't deliver on small votes, that alone, I think, will see me being unseated, which is why I've been so passionate about the topic, not because I'm some sort of rabid right-winger that some of the viewers on Channel 4 might think.
And immigration is an issue for Red Wall voters. Last month, leader was the word most voters said was why they would hesitate to vote Labour. This month, after weeks of headlines, immigration is now the biggest issue. The result of the next general election is no foregone conclusion for Labour though, in part down to their leader. A few months back, Sir Keir Starmer was marginally more popular than Rishi Sunak, then the gap widened. Today, they are neck and neck. There is one person though who Rishi Sunak is considerably more popular than, Boris Johnson. Once responsible for winning seats like this, now voters of the so-called Red Wall seem to have had enough. Can I ask you, Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer, do either of them fill you with confidence?
Not at the moment. I'm half and half on both of them.
Which one of them floats your boat?
Well,
Rishi, only because whether he's right or wrong, he'll come out and say it.
Okay.
Keir Starmer, he must have so many splinters in his bum from sitting on the fence. It's untrue.
Okay, I've got one last one for you. Rishi Sunak or Boris Johnson?
Rishi.
Yeah,
I think Boris has had his chance.
Boris Johnson, what did you think of him?
Don't like him.
You don't? Why not? I thought he did quite well around here.
No. He might have come to one of the schools, but I don't like what he did during lockdown and COVID.
The then Prime Minister Boris Johnson said Red Wall voters had lent him their votes in 2019. The current Prime Minister has just over a year to stop them demanding it back.
Paul McNamara there. Well, earlier I spoke to James Daley, who's the Conservative MP for Bury North and part of the 2019 election Red Wall intake. I began by asking him if he was looking for a new job. He won his seat by a majority of 105 votes, the most marginal seat in England.
You know, sometimes broadcasters don't believe this, but I'm actually interested in doing stuff. I want to make sure that however long my time in Parliament is, that I've actually delivered things locally and that I made a difference.
Well, I admire your confidence, I have to say, but with 105 votes, however much you've done locally, you're going to be subject to the kind of national swings, aren't you? And they're not looking great for the Tories.
The voters will make whatever they will. The reality of the situation when the next general election will be whatever it will be. But what I worry more about is that if I were to lose at the next election, that I could look myself in the mirror and say the things that I've done have improved the community that I represent.
So apart from what you've done for your constituencies, what do you think is the miracle that can turn it around for you and for your party at the next election?
Well, Matt, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think from your polling that Rishi Sunak is now neck and neck with Keir Starmer in terms of best Prime Minister. And the one thing I think that when people go to vote, whatever the polls may say now, they want the best person to lead the country. And I suspect there'll be a substantial lead for the Prime Minister over Keir Starmer at the time of the next general election.
The areas where Labour's doing rather well is the economy and, of course, handling of the NHS, which has always been one of their strengths. But on the economy, you do have a mountain to climb, don't you? Because of the cost of living crisis and all the other things that have made life rather difficult in recent months.
Well, I think the evidence that we have in respect to the economy is that the Prime Minister and we'll have to wait and see what the budget says tomorrow. But certainly the evidence is that in terms of the Prime Minister's handling of the economy, your polling is suggesting that he's doing a very, very good job. And so I support your polling in respect of that. And I think when that gets even better and when the Prime Minister brings a year of growth and stability and cutting inflation and all the other positive policies he's had, I hope you invite me back on next year at this time, Matt, because we can talk about the great successes and how the polls have turned around at that point.
You see in those numbers reflected in our poll a certain amount of squishiness that could head in your direction in the next year or before the election.
Matt, since I've been an MP, I've not had one email or one person say to me, I'm going to go to vote for that Keir Starmer. I think Labour, the Labour Party's established vote. The people who will vote for them anyway, Matt, are going to continue to vote for them. I think what your poll also shows is there's a lot of undecided people who are waiting to see what the Prime Minister and this government are going to do over the next 12 months.
So Keir Starmer is not necessarily sealing the deal with swing voters, but not necessarily is Rishi Sunak. I mean, they're not exactly super charismatic. I mean, they're both quite technocratic, aren't they? And I think, I just wonder, is that going to be a problem for you in a year's time?
I don't see that as a problem at all. I think people want competent leaders. I think they want decisive leaders. That's what I think the Prime Minister is. You've got to ask yourself, Matt, if the polling is so dire for the Conservatives, why is Keir Starmer so unpopular? I just leave a question mark after that.
The one issue where you score very highly is on immigration, being tough on immigration. Is that what you're going to stake your election campaign on, do you think?
I think immigration is part of the wide-ranging policies that will be judged on. I mean, we had a debate in Parliament yesterday about the new legislation put forward by the government. And I think what I took from that is that we have lots of politicians who throw around wild allegations and use language which is completely inappropriate. The only thing the Conservative government are trying to do is to respond to the crisis that is happening on our borders and putting in place reasonable measures to ensure that the public interest is protected.
Your party, the Prime Minister, you as an MP, are hostage to fortune here, aren't you? Because the Prime Minister has promised to stop the boats, and so far any policy that's been tried has been unworkable.
We can't intellectualise politics, Matt, can we? We can only judge politicians on the outcome of what they're doing. The Prime Minister has been the Prime Minister for about 4 or 5 months now. And I think his record so far is showing that he gets things done.
James Daley, thank you very much indeed. Well, joining me now from Westminster Live is the Labour Party Chair, Annalisa Dodd. Good to have you back on the programme, Annalisa Dodd. Is there a danger that the Labour Party, although you're so far ahead in the polls compared to the Tories, including our exclusive poll, could snatch defeat from the jaws of victory?
Well, of course, an election result is always in the hands of the electorate. It's in the hands of voters. But I have to say I'm really encouraged. When I go up and down the country, I find that Labour's able to have that conversation with voters, the kind of conversation that we weren't able to be having even 2 years ago. Now I think many people are asking themselves the really big question, when they consider their circumstances after 13 years of Conservative government, are they better off? Is their family better off? And the answer to that question for almost everybody actually is no. And there's a clear contrast now with Labour. We have very clear policies to move our country forward, to get it growing again. And when people hear those policies, they support them. And I think that's the big contrast between Labour and the Tories now.
But as there are lots of questions. And another question is, who's better for us, for the country, in number 10? And you could say it's astonishing that Sir Keir Starmer, is level pegging, according to this poll, with Rishi Sunak, who's the third Prime Minister, Tory Prime Minister in the last year, who came to power at a time of absolutely shambolic politics, and yet he seems to be creeping up on the polls and is level pegging with your guy.
Well, actually, we've seen, unfortunately, continued shambles from the Conservatives and, unfortunately, a Prime Minister who's not willing to stand up to his party. And again, that's where there's a big difference, because I remember when Keir Starmer came to be the leader of the Labour Party, people said at that time, look, Keir, there's no way that you're going to be able to move forward. They wrote off Labour. They said that we would have another 10, 20 years out of power.
Why is he not convincing the voters? I mean, he should. You could argue he should be as far ahead, of Rishi Sunak as the Labour Party is of the Tory Party.
Well, Keir's progress has been steady, and he was very clear. He wanted to sort out his party first. Labour did have significant problems when he came in as the leader. And unlike Rishi Sunak, yes, he did take time to sort out his party, to stand up to those causing problems in his party, to root out anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, and now to be laying out those missions for our country, being completely clear that Labour will have a long-term approach to governing, no sticking plasters. He's been clear on that.
Yes, but is there anything that he can say that he hasn't said already that could convince those wavering voters? He's been, leader of the opposition for almost 3 years now. And I just wonder if there's anything new that he can say that could seal the deal.
Well, actually, Keir wants and Labour want to have a much deeper conversation with people in this country. It's not about gimmicks. It's not about cons and a soundbite from different politicians. We've had an awful lot of that over the 13 years, and people are sick of it. It's about a politician who's straight talking, who's got clear plans, he knows where he wants to get to. And when people see what Keir is saying, the policies he's setting out, they like that change and they can believe in it, unlike what we've seen recently.
Got to leave it there, but the next election is in 20 months' time. That's a long time to go. Annalisa Dodd, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.